record right now, and we'll just hope for the best. Maybe we can say a little prayer that it works here real quick, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Spirit, ask for the consideration of your blessing on the technical side of the interview to be recorded properly, and for us to be able to have good conversation in resonance with your will for the highest benefit of all living beings, and honoring the memory of the great Bill Monroe, and the beautiful love story between Julia and Bill, and how much that has enriched the world in so many ways. And we give you all the glory for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Good to be here.
Yay. Thank you so much for being up for doing this interview. And, when we talked just a little bit earlier, we kind of focused on the essence of Bill Monroe as being the subject, because I feel like it's long overdue and high time for your story and your voice to be heard, very well. I know you've contributed to a couple of the books on Bill, but I think that you have some more to share with people that's really getting to the heart and soul of who Bill Monroe was.
Yes, and it's important because we can learn from one another's lives and the experiences that they may go through, and how we can relate that to our lives. And essence is so important to me because, to me, it is what we are born with, and our capacities and incapacities. And um, it's within us. It's in our spirit and our soul and our body. And it's different than personality, because personality is acquired, in other words, but essence is our own, or his essence was his own and no one else's. For instance, it's what he was born with, and it could not be separated from him. So and sometimes it's hard to distinguish one from another, because personalities, that comes from certain events that you go through in your life. Could be a war, or in his case, being cross-eyed, for instance, Christopher,
Mm-hmm.
that created uh, that feeling where he would hide from people because they would make fun of him. Well, that affected his personality. That wasn't in the essence that he was born with, within his own spirit and soul. You know what I mean? So
I
that
do.
created shyness, or uh, and also being characterized as being uh, stubborn or tough or competitive or whatever. That that's when the personality, those little personality traits come out. Especially in the formative years of children.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah.
From the ages of 2 to 6, that's when those characteristics are formed. Certain things are innate behaviors, certain things are learned behaviors. And I wanted us to, I was glad you wanted to talk about it, because if we can discuss, his essence and how it related to his music, it's often overlooked throughout his life. Of course, his music changed from, as Butch Robbins would say, from the primal farm art form, and then it changed again, and after the 40s, and then it went into a creative art form, in the 60s, and then he was in a real hiatus later on in life when I knew him, um, and the from 76 on, it was totally different. The music took a little different
Yeah.
form.
Constantly
So
creating.
many instruments. Never stopped creating, never stopped writing. Constantly, it was in his head, whether rolling down the bus, down the road in the bus, hearing the wheels, sound of the wheels of the bus. Uh, you know, uh, but it go. But in the beginning, as I had talked about before, he he gleaned from what he heard, a boy on the farm following in his father's footsteps, plowing. Or at night, the night birds, like in My First Whippoorwill, that song he wrote, I hear
Hmm.
those night birds are calling. I know they're calling me. Uh, when they would turn the foxhounds loose and the sound of the different mouths of the foxhounds and all of those, a train whistle in the
Yeah,
night, the clickety clack of the tracks, the rhythm of the wheels of the wagons he was pulling and pulling cross ties, the birds, just and learning to sing and uh, loudly where he could hear it echo and hear push his voice to where he had a strong voice, for instance. And those are all things I guess we musicians and singers and songwriters, you know, it's born in them most of the time. They don't have to learn it. And if it's nurtured by their parents and they're free to express that, uh, it's an outlet for their emotions and express themselves.
absolutely.
And so you could ask me any questions you want to, but I always felt deeply about it. And it was such an honor and such a blessing to know such a musical genius and a legend, a living legend at that time for me.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe not everybody knows it, but you were already a blossoming
That I,
musician. Sorry.
I was just very uh, 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 humble.
It's breaking up just a little bit, Julia. Sorry, I missed all that last part. So sorry that the connection is a little wonky.
By being in presence. Oh, you can't hear me anymore?
It's coming back. It's coming back. I can hear you
Oh,
now.
good.
Sorry about that. I just missed that little last
Okay,
part. I can edit
that's
that out.
okay. He must be listening. He's listening up here.
That's right. He's with us.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, he's with us.
So maybe not everybody knows but that you were a blossoming musician when you met Bill Monroe, and then you ended up playing with the Bluegrass Boys many times and being a featured solo vocalist on many shows.
Yes, uh, I wasn't afraid to go on stage with him, but we played. I played with him from '76 till about I don't know, the late '70s, 1980. It took me about 4 years, almost 4 years, before I would get on stage. But we would every Wednesday night we'd go to church and we brought our instruments, and that's when we'd sing and play together. Church down the road.
Mm.
Uh,
Was that in
uh,
Hendersonville?
Goodlettsville.
Goodlettsville.
Yes, on Center Point Road. It was a Pentecostal church. We did a lot of benefits there and a lot of the other bluegrass groups would come.
And Bill took his spirituality
And
seriously, didn't he?
yes, he did. He certainly did. And so that was every Wednesday night. Couldn't usually go on Sundays because he was always on the road. So I would go on the road with him. We took care of the farm and we fixed it up. Number one, and then I would go on the road with him and I would sell at the concession booth, the
Yeah.
records and things like that, and listen to everything, of course, and soak it in like a sponge. So I played I borrowed a small little Stella guitar, a little yellow Stella, as they say,
Hmm.
and went on to that. He says, "Oh, we can't have that," and so he had a Grammer guitar and loaned it to me, and so I played the Grammer, and finally out of all of these trips back and forth to California and back and everywhere, finally we were in Texas one night when did the Austin City Limits show that's on YouTube with
Uh-huh.
Butch and Mark
Fantastic.
Embry and Kenny Baker and Wayne Lewis.
One of the best.
And after they did that, the next that night, that same night, we played the Armadillo. He played the Armadillo Club, and he told me, he said, "Now, Julia, you're going to sing tonight," and I mean it. No
Yeah.
more holding back. See, I always sang harmony,
Uh,
with him and his pickup truck or whatever. I never would sing lead. He said, "No, you're going to sing lead, and that's all there is to it. Now you've got to be brave, and you've just got to do this," and I mean it. So,
Stepping up.
so that's when it started, and from then on, I always did at least two numbers or three numbers, depending if I got it encore. I was felt very fortunate, and so that went on for a couple of years, and that was wasn't afraid of him. It was Kenny.
I hear you. What an intimidating presence.
Yeah, yeah, oh, I didn't want to mess anything up, and I wasn't a black guitarist, cross picking or anything like that. Lead, just had to hold down the rhythm. And then they bought me the little Diblotto 1939 Martin in December of '81, and I had it for 39 years, and it just sold. I suppose the other day, after someone saw David Greer playing it, David nicely accommodated me to do that.
Yeah,
So,
no better person to demo a guitar.
right, especially since Lamar played for Bill, and Bill loved David very, very much, and they recorded on Butch Robbins' Grounded Center and Focused. But so yes, I enjoyed singing it with the Bluegrass Boys very much so, and never tried to get in their way. Was never late to get on the bus, and what went on the bus stayed on the bus as far as I was concerned. So I didn't want I didn't want to be the type of woman to butt into anybody's business. I just did my part. I
And I think
stuck up for them. I stuck up for them too. If they needed new suits or it was too hot and I didn't, Kenny would come to me all red faced, say, it's 106 out here in Georgia. Ask the chief if we could take our jackets off, and Bill would come back and say, "Those are my Bluegrass Boys. You tell them absolutely not, you know. Do you want to sing?" And I'd say, "Well, yes, sir." I said, "But it's hot." So I'd tell them, and they would do that set, and then we'd all get back on the bus and they'd be sweating, and Bill would pull me back aside. He'd say, "Okay, you tell them that they don't have to wear their suits, their jackets. They can take
Woo!
them off
Phew.
only because of you, Julia." But I had
Yeah,
to watch it because I would stick up for the boys. I always would, duck my neck out for those Bluegrass Boys. I loved every one of them. To me, they were like knights of the round table.
I love that. And of course the name of Bill's band was the Bluegrass Boys, but he was not, he didn't have the idea that it was, supposed to be all men on stage because, then, he featured, women in his band,
Of
from the
course.
from the 40s, and so there was,
Right?
that was
Sally
a
Ann
part.
Forster and
Absolutely.
then his daughter,
Yeah.
Melissa, and
Bluegrass Boys.
I guess then there was a dry spell there, then me, and then
Bessie Lee, of
after,
course.
yeah, right, Bessie Lee. And then there was a dry spell after Bessie Lee, to me, and then later on there was another woman, didn't last very long. Let me think. Well, I guess I'm wanting to forget the name. Uh, let's see, DD Prestige, was that it? And then it changed to Diane Christian, and now it's changed to something else. I don't know. That didn't last long, but I know he had asked Kathy Chiavala to sing in his band, but she decided not to
Oh,
for
wow.
good
No kidding.
reason.
Yeah.
Yes,
I had a
and
question. One of my, I play music with my wife, and it's just such a special connection, with Brooke, as it is with anybody who's into that heart space. Of course, where two or more gathered, the Holy Spirit will be there, and I feel like a lot of the music that I write, has a lot to do with her heart, like empowering the music. And I remember hearing a story, and I've never, heard the official story about it, but it's about Old Dangerfield. one of Bill's
Oh,
tunes
yes, the
everyone
instrumental.
loves. Would you tell that story about how that came to be written? Did you ask him to write that and he like wrote it in the car or something like that?
I did. We left Bean Blossom one night and really late after midnight, you know, trying to get home to the farm. And I drove that pickup truck, his old blue Ford pick at the time, going down the interstate. And I was so sleepy. I thought I would fall asleep at the wheel. And I said, Bill, I'm getting so sleepy. I think we need to get a room. I can't, I don't think I can go on and I don't want to have an accident. No, 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 no. We've got to get home. We've got to get back to the farm. And I said, oh my goodness. And so I pulled over to the side of the road. I said, all right. And I reached to the back. It had a back seat in that pickup truck, half cab. I said, all right, then, if you're going to make me drive, you're going to write a tune to make me stay awake. And I mean it. So
Nice.
I reached back and I got that mandolin case. I said, okay, open it up, please. And he did. And there was a full moon. I'll never forget it. And the
Wow.
corn, you could see the corn on each side of the interstate, with the tassels, they hadn't harvested it yet. It was ready to be harvested as, during bean blossom time. And it was the most beautiful thing. So he started writing this tune, you know, and it only had two parts. And
Uh-huh.
I said, oh, you got to have a third part,
Yeah.
write me a third part. Keep going. I'm staying awake. So he wrote the third part. And I thought it was one of the most beautiful instrumentals he had written during that time. And it was on Master Bluegrass. They included it. And he says, all right, now what should I name that? Lots of times he'd ask me to name some of
Yeah.
his instrumentals as we were going along and when he'd write them. And he said, is there because he knew my grandmother that lived
Hmm.
here in Mount Vernon, Texas, and had met her. And he says, give me a name of an old timey town in Texas close to your grandmother's. I said, well, there's Dangerfield. He
Wow.
says, okay, that's it. So he named it Old Dangerfield.
Wow. That is
And
such
yeah, it was what I mean, in the dark, no lights. He didn't need any lights in the cab lights to look at a fingerboard or play that Lord Lore. It was by
that
moonlight, full moon.
that that is such a remarkable story, remarkable tune. It's one of the tunes that, a lot of the younger folks, Sierra Hull and plays it, and so many
Really,
people love Old Dangerfield. And so thank you for being the genesis of that amazing tune, which is such a huge gift to the world in bluegrass music.
I think so too. And I like the way Butch did that. But Butch included it on his grounded, centered, and focused with Mike. They went in. It was a combination of uh, uh, old Ebenezer Scrooge and Dangerfield together, and I thought that went really well.
Absolutely. What are a couple other tunes that you helped Bill name? I remember there was the Blue Goose.
Yes, let's see. That came out on the Bluegrass Memories album in '77. I drove a Volkswagen hatchback from Boston to Nashville when he asked my mother for permission for me to come down. I was 21, and after meeting him at the Berkshire Mountain Bluegrass Festival, he called in September, and I came down in December, and I drove it through that snowstorm, and I had it for quite a while. So I had named her the Blue Goose, and so he used that for a title for that tune. And then let's see,
Love it.
Old Ebenezer. How he wrote that was
Yeah.
we were watching the old Christmas Carol, the
Oh,
one with
wow.
is it Alistair Sims, the movie,
Okay. Wow.
and so uh, he had never watched the movie. He didn't watch movies much.
Uh-huh.
And so we watched that together, and he started playing it. I mean, the minute it was over, because it really touched him about the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And you know more of a well, you're a mandolin player, so you know the the downbeats when it goes bop ba da dee da da bop ba da dee da da bop ba da dee da da, right? So those
Yeah,
three syncopated main stops are the ghosts of Christmas past, present, future. That's what that is in there.
that is so
Details.
beautiful.
So, and let's see, frog on a lily pad, you know.
Yeah, you named that?
Yeah, and I
Wow.
told him it sounded like a frog because like a frog goes ba da 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 ba
Baroque.
da 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 da, you know, yeah, jiggerump, ba
That's
da da da
so
da.
cool.
Yeah, and
I love that
let's see,
tune.
I named trombone
Oh, wow.
because because it sounded like a trombone to me, you know.
Yeah.
And Lady of the Blue Ridge,
Oh,
I named
wow.
that. We were on the bus going with the Bluegrass Boys going up through your part of the country,
Uh-huh.
and there was a church, a Catholic church, the Virgin Mary, and it
Yes.
had the name of it, and we passed by it, and it said Our Lady of the Blue Ridge. I think it's in Virginia,
Yeah,
maybe
I think I remember
somewhere,
that maybe on
or
81.
maybe it was Carolinas. Okay, that's it. That's yeah. And so a lot of little, you know, he got ideas all along the way, all down through his life, especially when he was riding on the road, Cheyenne, or the list goes on and on, right? Road to
Yeah.
Columbus. Uh, oh, you can name more than I'm drawing a blank, but also, of course, after driving in wheelhouse, and
Yeah. You
oh,
know,
it just goes, list goes on and on. But,
you were just mentioning before
quite
we start.
confident we'll be having a.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, oh, I was just saying that, before we started rolling here, you were mentioning when you first got to Nashville, you met Bill, and he immediately started writing Beautiful Julia LaBella, the song.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right. Was it Evan Riley? I saw wanted to know if I knew the words to that, and I do. I wish I still had the little piece of paper that he wrote it on. But when I first got there at the Holiday Inn, yes, that's right. And he came back, and after he read his paper, he took it out and he tried to get the pitch, and it was he read it from a piece of paper. I can't sing like I used to. I've had thyroid out of my neck, and I've had plate and screws in my neck, and artificial this, so I can't sing exactly. I don't know where he'd pitch it, but it was beautiful Julia La Bella stood there in her young maidenhood. Through her eye. Oh, no, that's wait a minute. I forgot it.
You got it. It'll come. Sounds beautiful. Pitch is great.
Beautiful Julia La Bella stood there in her young maidenhood. In her eye, through her eye, in her eyes, through her tears, she said, "I love you." And there before me she stood, like an angel from heaven. She was sent there. In her eyes, a light of heaven shone through. Beautiful Julia La Bella. Julia, you know I love you.
Wow, that is so
Something like
gorgeous. Your
that.
singing sounds
Sorry,
beautiful.
I can't sing like I used to.
Oh, you sound fantastic.
And it was a waltz, you know. Ba da dee
Yeah.
da 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 ba ba ba. Da 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 ba da da. La da 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 dee da ba da da da. Da 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 dee da da da. Then you hear the fiddles come in.
Oh
Like
my
an
God.
angel from heaven, she was sent there. In her eyes, a light of heaven shone through. Beautiful Julia La Bella. Julia, you know I love you.
That is
He
so
never did. He
perfect.
wanted to record it, and he wanted the Gatlin brothers. Gatlin brothers came backstage at Grand Ole Opry one night, and he said, "Come around here, you boys. you brothers come around here. I want you to hear this song." And he sang it and played it, and they loved it, and they had their harmonies. They had it down, and they were going to, but it never was recorded. But it only had that one stanza or whatever. It didn't have anything else to go along with it. He never complete finished it, but that's what it was. And I'll never forget when he read it to me. I was and 21 and just got to town, didn't know anyone, and I he I realized that he was telling me he loved me. So
That's so
I
beautiful.
didn't know quite how to take that, because I just arrived and I was supposed to be working for him, which I did the next morning. I went out to the farm and met Wayne Lewis and a farm hand, and they drove the truck up to Kentucky, and we hauled hay. We would make 2 trips from Beaver Dam to Goodlettsville, and
Wow.
we did that for about 5 days in a row. It nearly killed me, but I did it.
That's hard work.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the bluegrass way.
So that's the bluegrass way. You got to work, if you want to
That's right. Hey, Julia, are there any
be a bluegrass boy. But
are there a couple of like, humorous stories that kind of like are a couple of your favorite kind of funny moments with Bill through the years?
oh, some of them, yes, and I have a lot of touching stories. I'll hit the touching ones first.
Please,
I
yeah.
it did. I don't. A lot of people that knew Bill, and some that are uh are are younger, a generation or so younger than me, they might not have known how benevolent Bill was and how much he helped and wanted to help people and not brag about it. But I've gone with him many a time, especially since this is Christmas time, for instance, and we would take hams or turkeys to families that needed them, or we would he would plow the gardens up with the teams of mules, and he taught me how to plow. We would have so many. We had one garden down the hollow that was an acre. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Excuse me. And one behind the house, I planted 100 tomato plants in it, and another one behind the cabin that was, I don't know how big it was, maybe half an acre. So it was a lot, and I canned, and Bertie Lee, that's was one of the founding members of the station, in
Yeah.
along with the Charmaine and Marty Lanham and Bob Fowler,
Mhm.
Bertie Lee Smith, and Bob Smith.
Yeah.
They would come out, and I'd take the vegetables to them, and we would can for days, and then Roland White and his family would come out and pick all the vegetables they want. Bill would tell me, get on the phone and call the different ones that might needs food, who want to share. And so that's what we did. So that's one good story about his
Beautiful.
character. That
Generous.
his heart. He had such a big heart for people because he knew what it was like to be down, and
Hmm.
he thought we should all pull together, and help each other.
Yeah.
He used to do a lot of benefit shows for so many people, and I know the musicians union later years, that you were supposed to pay the boys, pay your musicians if you went further than 100 miles out, even if it was a charity show.
Hmm.
And anyways, there was one show where the latter bluegrass boys, said they didn't want to go, and he got kind of aggravated. And he says, "Well, I hope that it was for It was for Ray Goins,
Uh-huh.
Melvin Goins, his brother. He had heart surgery, and Ralph Stanley was going to go there, and all these people were going. So he just slammed the phone down on one of the boys. I will not mention any names because I don't like doing that, but I'll forget. It was a little funny. He just says, "Well, I just hope you someday that you get to where you need some help, and you see how it feels when you don't get any help."
Yeah.
And slammed the phone down. And so we went to Station Inn one night that night evening, and the Continental Divide were playing.
Nina
and we were
Palmer.
sitting in the back, and so I think David Harmley and Scott Vestal came
Hmm.
up on him to say hello, and they said, "Mr. Bill, I hear there's a benefit show going on up there for the Melvin's putting on for Ray Owens. Are you going?" He says, yes, but I don't have a band."
Mm.
And they said, "What do you mean you don't have? Oh, they're not going with me." They said, "Well, we'll go." He says, "Well, all right, then be at the farm at 8:30 in the morning, and we'll ride up there. We'll go." And so
Wow.
they went. So when we got up there, and they were practicing backstage, and so many bands were there in Eastern Kentucky. I forget where we were. And anyways, in Continental Divide, they had a female fiddler, and I've forgotten her name, but she started out with Bill Anderson,
Mm.
or later on she went to Bill Anderson. That's right. And I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name, but she was wonderful. Well, when she walked in the room, she opened her fiddle case up. Bill turned around and looked at everybody, and he says, I've never had a woman play fiddle for me before. Now I don't know if this is going to work." And I felt so bad for her, and
Yeah. Oh,
she was almost in tears, and I looked at her and winked, and I just sort of
nice.
suddenly looked at Bill, and he says to her out of the clear blue, "Uh, can you play White Horse Breakdown?" Well, she
Wow.
cracked down on that fiddle bow, and she did such a good job on the
Nice.
whole tune, and I was so proud of her because there weren't very many women in bluegrass back then.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of that. And she made the cut, and he says, "That's fine. That's mighty fine. You'll work out
Beautiful.
just fine."
That's such a
And
great
so
story.
that's a little bit funny, but there's other things. Uh, I like to think of the things that he did with the children, and after cleaning up Bean Blossom, the trash and everything would be there the next day, and
Hmm.
out in that hot sun, and all these little boys would be girls that be picking up cans of things, and he bought everybody something to eat, and holding up their little, whether it was Dr. Pepper cans or Mountain Dew or whatever they were drinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they all had happy smiles on their faces. He loved the kids.
Oh,
And that was before he was giving quarters to everybody. Then that started. But
huh?
there's so many memories. There's a lot of good memories. A lot of good memories. Oh, the last one I know. Uh, I was a pretty good sure shot
Mm.
out at the farm. And there was a trick horse rider in Nashville. Excuse me. I need something cold to drink. Um, been talking too long. I'll cut it short now. His name was Cowboy Lane, and he was a great horseman. He was a stunt uh, trainer for horses in Hollywood, and he came back to Nashville. He lived there. He worked for WENO, and he had a trick horse. So he came out to the farm because he needed money, and so we hired him, and Bill paid him and to train the horses, and he could make them lay down, play dead, and just do anything.
Wow.
So one day, and he would cut wood for the old wood cook stove Bill bought for me in the cabin, and just split wood for the wood cook stove, and that takes a long time. Just anything to make money to help his mother out, you see.
Uh-huh.
And one day he drove up in that old 50 something pickup truck up the gravel road to the cabin, and he said, "Mr. Bill, I've got some rifles here." That's how he talked. "I got some rifles here, and
Hmm.
uh, Bill said, "Well, how many have you got?" He said, I want to sell them." He said, "I got three." He says, "Okay, I tell you what, put three cans out there down across the drive." And Julia, he said, "You try them out. And if you hit for each can, you get a rifle if you hit it."
Wow.
I did, bam, 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 just like that. He says,
Nice.
"Okay." You know, so he was always doing funny things like that, putting you up to see what you could do,
Yeah.
whether it was a bluegrass boy on stage or pulling tricks on them, or uh, getting a rise out of them, or me, or whatnot. He loved he was a practical joker, you know. He
Good sense
liked to
of
pull practical jokes on folks, and just like when he jumped in that Elvis's Cadillac, that was on a dare. Keith Bilbrey. It was at the CD release party that he had in the '90s for that box set, you know,
uh-huh.
for MCA.
Yeah.
And Keith Bilbrey came over to me, and Doug Dillard was with us. And anyways, Keith Bilbrey said, "I bet you won't. You can't get Bill to jump into that Elvis's gold-plated Cadillac
Oh my gosh.
on display.
Sure.
You know, the top goes up and down."
Yeah.
And but it's behind us. It was behind a low plexiglass barrier. You know, it was very low at that time. I don't even think it was 3 feet high at maximum. And Bill, I went over to Bill and I told him, and he says, "Oh, really? Well, if anybody deserves to get in Elvis's Cadillac, it's me. It was on the
I
back
know.
side of his first hit." And so he said, "If you get me some men to get me to help me get up over that thing, I'll get in it. We'll all get in it." So,
Ah,
well, I knew that would cause a stir with the media and the flash bulbs. It's all of,
yeah.
and you know, and so here they all the photographers came, and I mean, Doug Dillard got behind the wheel of the Elvis's Cadillac and the gold phones. You know, there was
Yeah.
one up front, so Elvis held Elvis. I mean, Douglas. You know, had the phone to his ear. Bill was in the back seat with me and Douglas's girlfriend at the time, and we were in the back seat. And Bill's son, a grandson, Jimbo, we call him James William II. He hopped in, and Mark Kuykendall was in the front, and he was playing bass at the time for Bill. And Alan O'Brien was around back, and I think Blaine Sprouse was in another part of a picture, and Alan O'Brien and Roland White.
Yeah, Lord.
And anyway, so that's the funniest one I can think of. And to this day, when you go into the new Country Music Hall of Fame and you go to see Elvis's white, and the interior is all gold with all his gold record hits, 45s and everything, gold plated inside. Uh, that barricade is much, much, much taller. There is no way you can get anybody to hop over that thing. I guess they learned their lessons.
Oh, that's so great. What a moment there.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great. Maybe I can put that in the
so
video here.
that's it. That's the funniest thing I think that it could have done, and it was in all the magazines and everything on Crooked Chase show. You know, it
Yeah.
caused a big stir. So he liked to cause a
Yeah.
stir, you know, once in a while.
Just switching gears briefly here, we talked a little bit before we started rolling here about Bill's connection to, and you touched on it earlier, connection to the natural world and the natural environment. And you mentioned, how important it is for people that are really trying to learn bluegrass music to get into the country and to go have supper with country people and go to the little mountain church and hear the preacher, delivering the sermons and to be able to just interact with that world and to be accepted by that community and connect all those hearts and everything. And that Bill was always cueing into the into the whippoorwill, into the the sound of the lonesome wind through the pines, and
Yes.
all the natural elements, the freight train whistle, the chug of the engine, and all that. And I remember you told us a really cool story, and I want to touch on a couple things about the things that you helped connect at the farm. So you were mentioning that Bill ran the foxhounds every Tuesday, and you said that one night that he, and to me this is just really remarkable, just like he was able to pull from the old Ebenezer Scrooge, the past, present, and future, that he was able to write with one of his good fiddlers a song that reflected the different foxhounds voices.
Yes, and I don't know where that I had it. I tape recorded. Joe Stewart used to come out before we restored the cabin when it was in its primitive state. It was built in 1851, the original part. And he came out one cold night, and instead of them going outside and starting a fire, they would go out to the porch and listen, and come back in and get warmed up by the propane heater in the living room, and then go back out. And so they got their instruments out and started playing, and So they started writing an instrumental, and it's lost. And woe be it to whoever has that cassette tape out there in the universe somewhere
If you
here
got it, send it back to
on this
Julia.
earth. I don't know where it is, but anyways, it was amazing. They started uh I would switch back and forth between fiddle or guitar, and Bill played mandolin, of course. And he would make the sounds of the mouths, the barks of each dog, like, oh, there's Dallas, there's Jip,
Wow.
there's uh, Joe, there's this one and that one. So they all had different voices or tones in their barks, when they were chasing that fox, you know, just like. Just like the old bluesmen with the harmonicas would do the fox chase,
Yeah.
tune. And so I don't know they never did name it or anything like that, but Joe would come over quite often and just visit, and they loved to play. And Joe Stewart could really play a fiddle, but I love the way he played the guitar and added that blues element
He could
back
just do.
into bluegrass, like like Arnold Schultz's kind of style,
Yeah,
and
he could
laying
do.
those runs in there.
Yeah. Did so I know that Bill's talked about that he learned music by ear, like he maybe tried to learn some shape note singing, and then he said that wasn't the way that he was going to learn his music. Did he ever talk about
Right.
how important it was to learn that way, to be connected, to be able to hear the music and to be able to pick it out and to reflect what's going on in the natural environment like that?
Uh, what he used to tell me was that was him, and he drew from what he heard in his world
Yeah.
at the time, when it was his childhood world, the 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 farm there on at Jerusalem Ridge, you know, uh, and the sounds he would hear, uh, and then later on in life, the sounds that he drew from, and then he never listened to the much to the radio. They did have I think when Charlie came back and his brothers came back one time when he was young, and they uh, brought a phonograph, well, a Victrola type. They brought some 78s back to listen to some things. But until then, he didn't. The only music he heard were the people that lived around there, or his Uncle Pen, of course, and Arnold Schultz, and what was that other man's name? I've forgotten his name now, that played the guitar up there. Oh,
Oh,
I'm so sorry. It started with a C. I
I can't.
forgot his name. Sorry.
That's okay.
my my memory comes and goes. It'll come
Oh,
after we hang up, but
yeah.
someone out there in the bluegrass world knows who I'm talking about up there. But yeah, most of this was in his head. He was just bored with it, which most uh, musical geniuses or child gifted children have it in them. They're just born with that gift. I firmly believe that. Uh, child proteges, correct? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. But would you say
but
that's
yeah,
a
all
it's
of
an
that.
important essence about Bill, that he was able to hear and learn from what was going on around him, and then that was
Yes.
like the basis
And then
of.
sometimes, as he's been quoted as saying, I never wrote a song in my life, or I never. It's just out there, and I just reached down and pulled it, yeah, and
I love
pulled it
that.
out of the air. That it's out
I
there. It's out there. Just like waking up and dreaming. He would dream music.
Yeah, Bill's dream.
But in those days, that's before you could go grab your tape recorder or a iPhone or whatever and remember the melody, and you can't write music, so you had to hum it to yourself and wake up and start singing it or start playing it on your instrument immediately before you would forget it, or it vanishes, it's gone
That's
because it's
right.
out there.
That's right. I remember
And
one
he
time I heard him
believed
say, "The good
in
Lord just
that
woke
and the
up
old
the
ancient tone.
ancient
That's
tones."
right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Did he
Hmm.
ever reflect to you any of
And
his thoughts or philosophies about his connection to kind of the spirit of the Native American culture? Because that was such a strong, prevalent influence and just beautiful facet of the bluegrass diamond. You know, Trail of Tears and Pocahontas and even Jerusalem Ridge sounds a bit like that Southern flavor. Cheyenne, it's just on and
yes,
on.
he really related to it. Of course, his first wife, Carolyn, she was raised by a native uh, Indian descent, uh, wasn't she?
Yeah,
Um,
Blackfoot, I believe.
yes, and so that
Car-
probably played a part of that, and also he always had respect for them because and the way that they thought about the earth and to take care and be good stewards of the earth
Mm-hmm.
and the way they thought and but the ancient tones came from to him, he could hear it in it's part of your DNA, I think, too, or
Sure.
in your makeup
Yeah.
of where your people came from, and of course that would have been from Scotland,
Yeah.
the Scotch and Irish, and
Yeah.
then the hiding under the window of the Holiness Church in Rosine because they went to the Methodist Church. He sang there, but he couldn't read the shape notes in there, but he could sing in every part.
Yeah.
He started out playing singing bass.
Wow. No
He
kidding.
could sing bass too, but so it would go back to those sounds from the bagpipes and the fiddle, you know, and the drum and the all of that from Scotland. And then as he went to Japan and stuff, and it depends. I don't know the type of scales and the differences, but and then you have your Indian scale is so similar to some of those, you know, isn't it similar to um, the Chinese and
Yeah. The
some
pentatonic
Japanese
and minor
scales?
scales. Yeah.
That's what I correct. And so see that's where he could hear that and it went way back, you know, and all
Absolutely.
those tones. He could see the universality of it. He never used that word, the
Yeah.
universality of it, but it a lot of times he didn't have the words for things and he didn't explain things,
Yeah.
Christopher.
Mhm.
He just played it.
Yeah.
And then that's how he taught he wanted his bluegrass boys, he never told them in words
Hmm.
how he wanted something played. He would play it and then let them have their pass at it. And if they didn't get it right, then he would maybe just say no and play it again, you
Yeah.
know. But he never explained, and he never explained anything, you
Yeah.
know.
So to him, the true way to learn bluegrass, if you're going to be a bluegrass boy, was you got to be able to hear it and learn it by ear
Right. And as you touched
or
on,
felt.
and I didn't answer that question, he also felt that's why a lot of them used to say and make fun of, oh yeah, well, that makes you work on the farm or whatever. But a lot of the fellows later on, they had never experienced life on a farm, for instance, and didn't work out there digging fence posts or
Get your bluegrass training.
taking taking care of cattle or whatnot. And when you want bluegrass, if you now that way of life is slowly fading. So
Yeah.
there's not the younger generation now wouldn't understand it. And of course, bluegrass has taken different side roads, and that's okay as long
Yeah.
as we still have our foundation.
That's right.
And you can play along what you want to. I'm a big one believer in melody. As long as
Yes.
you play that melody, you don't get too far out there, as he used to say, to where
That's
you
right.
don't even recognize the tune anymore. And you make it your own, but you've got to always learn your foundations of the music first, and then branch off out from there. I know I wanted to learn it, and he encouraged me to go visit Ezra Klein and Margaret Klein's uh, homestead in outside of Man, West Virginia. That would be Bobby Osborne's first wife, Patsy Cline Osborne. And
Hmm.
he said, "Go! You need to go see how they live up there in those hollers." And it was a real experience, because you would go into the church, and the men would sit on one side and the women on the other, and the preacher would kind of halfway sing and preach, and the
Hmm.
men would sing and the women would answer back. Totally different than anything I had experienced before.
Yeah.
And if they like you up there, it might take, they meet you that one night, and it might take them a day. And if they like you, they come back, and all of a sudden, here they come. And some little lady brings you a little crocheted pillow
Oh.
that she's made, so it's different with mountain folks. You have to earn their trust and
Yeah.
their love.
Yeah.
They don't like folks looking down their noses at them, because you know people that live that way, whether it's dirt floors to the White House, I've seen it all, and we've got to love one another and understand. But to understand that music that that was born, you know, it is so good. If you can, if there's still places like that, I encourage anyone to go up the hollers and through the mountains and ride through those roads after this pandemic is over, and we can do that again, and we don't lose people. It's so important, because that's where the music came from. Or like
Absolutely.
Sparta, Tennessee. I went up there with Benny Martin and Jimmy Martin on trips to
Wow.
visit and see how uh, where they lived, and how they and Ralph Stanley, to go up there on the Clinch Mountains
Yeah.
and see
Strong.
his old home place where he was born, and where his mother cooked on the wood stove. Things like
Good.
that are important. So immerse yourself, just as if you were a painter. You go to the master,
Yeah.
and you learn. You learn from them, and I think that's all I've got to say.
Can we just
And
touch on a couple more things, but before we close out here, I really appreciate you sharing all this and taking the time.
okay, I got a little emotional there. I'm sorry.
No worries. This is real stuff. This is heart and soul, and this is a huge long story of which you were just a
Because the
few.
music meant the world to me. It wasn't just about our relationship. It was who he was and what he represented, and his fans around the world. And later in life, to go back to take care of him, I wanted him to live a little longer for his fans around the world. And
Well, I know that you helped him with that. Helped keep him safe and strong and inspired and loved and protected and well tailored and
I
all that.
tried to do my best.
You did great. And I was just going to mention, one of the things that I just love was just thinking about the connection with the family, the friends, the community, were the parties that you would invite everyone over in the 80s the Alan O'Briens and all those folks over to the farm, because it was a little bit of a different culture, some of the long hair folks, and then you helped bridge that gap and bring them so they could learn from the master and he could learn from them. Would you talk just a second about that?
Well, thank you. Yes. When I arrived, in '76, and I noticed, I had, uh, that wasn't long after the Circle album had come out, a few years before that. And I noticed he wasn't on that. And I remember asking him, I was never afraid to ask him questions. A lot of folks would be, or I'd put cassettes on in the bus and say, oh, don't play that one. But, oh, I didn't want to be on that album because I didn't like the name of their band. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, nitty gritty, knits, knits are in, when I was growing up, knits were something that were in your hair.
Yeah, lice. Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And I said, oh, Bill, now come on. I said, and he said, well, I had a conflict of where I was and could not. He was they were playing somewhere else in the country at the time when the sessions were going on, but whatever. But he was a little leery in the 70s of some of the longer haired musicians that were moving here from California, for instance, or the Northeast or whatever. Even though, I mean, because when Richard Green and Lamar and Pete Rowan were with him, of course
Yeah.
they all had short hair, right?
Uh-huh.
So, but this was later on. This got into the 70s stuff,
Yeah.
early 70s. But I said, well, now, Bill, you can't really feel that way because uh, these people want to learn. They're learning. They love your music.
Yeah.
They're studying it. They're
Yeah.
learning it, and
Persons.
they will carry it on, and then later after them, they'll influence people, and they will go back and say, okay. I said they interview these guys and cats, and chicks, and I said they interview them in magazines and things, and they'll want to know who are who influences them, who do they listen to, they always ask us. I said, and if they say Bill Monroe, they'll go out and buy your records. Bill,
Yeah.
this is the way I got around it. Yeah. See, I appealed to
Smart.
that side of it,
Smart.
and it worked. And it worked. And I said, and so it'll further the music, Bill. It'll live on forever. So you can't just cut them out,
That's such a wonderful
you know.
service to the community and the music. Thank you for that.
And I said, so you can't count them out. It won't live on. And I said, it's like your baby. You want it to live on and for long after you're gone. And so we started going out more often and going. He'd say, "Any music playing around tonight? What's going on?"
Hmm.
He started getting out more, and we'd go to Station Inn a lot. The old Station Inn, of course, and then when it moved, and then we'd go to Hubert Davis and hear them, or we'd go to another place down on Dickerson Road. I forgot the name of it, and it was open, and Roland White and a bunch of them would come down, and there Bob Fowler and Ingrid and different ones that pop in, and Bob and Bertie and whatnot. And
Was that the Dusty Roads Tavern?
anyways, I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's been so long ago,
No
but I'll
worries.
never forget. Roland came walking in, and they closed the doors, and they didn't serve any beer after 2 o'clock, cutoff time, of course. Bill played all night. They played all night long, almost until all of a sudden 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. Here comes some policemen in there, and when the police came in there, boy, Bill didn't stop. He just kept playing and
Yeah.
playing louder. It's
Ha!
like, you know, we were all scared. We all wanted to just go running, thinking,
Right.
wondering if the other guys would leave the stage, and they didn't leave him. They just kept playing, and they came up. What seems to be the problem? Bill would say, he says, "Oh, we're just playing music." And I said, "Well, no, nobody's drinking,
Yeah.
So they left,
Nice one, Bill.
and Bill decided, okay, it's time to box it up. So I'll
Yeah.
never forget we left, and I still had Massachusetts tags on my Blue Goose, my Volkswagen. Bill was following me. Thank goodness he was following me, and um, all of a sudden, but he's following further behind because he didn't see well at night. I got pulled over by the police,
Oh, jeepers.
and yeah, and they put me in the paddy wagon,
Oh, no.
and I said I haven't been drinking, at all. We were at a club, and they said, well, we're going to draw your blood, and this. I haven't been drinking, and then they started talking like I wasn't used to this type of behavior. I moved from Boston, and
Yeah.
they started talking about things they shouldn't be talking about in front of a woman, and all of a sudden, thank God, there was a knock on their door on the paddy wagon, and it was Bill.
Oh,
And
great.
he says, what seems to be the problem here now? You know, she was
Yeah.
with me. I can vouch for this lady. Now you need to let her go. And they
Yeah.
let me go.
Oh, good on him.
Yeah. And so,
Coming to the
so
rescue. Bluegrass rescue.
right. But then it wasn't until after we restored the cabin and the other house at the farm that he added on to that had been the shell of the house that Ed Mayfield stayed in when Ed was alive. He wouldn't disturb it. And Kenny Baker batched in it for a little while, and Joe Stewart. And anyways, it wasn't until we cleaned up the farm, we fixed it up, we fixed the cabin up, and had a big porch and all. We started. He said, "Why don't we get some people to come over here and you cook and we'll have food and they can bring food if they want to. We'll start having jam sessions here at the house." I said, "That'd be wonderful." And so that's what we started doing. We invited the McCurrys, and oh my goodness, Kathy Chiavla came out. Just uh,
John and Lynn
John and
Hedgecock.
Lynn Hedgecock.
Yeah.
Yes, and so many people came out. Oh golly, I can't think of all their names now, but everybody that
Perkins,
was
was
in
he
that.
out there?
Alan later on, but
Uh-huh.
Alan O'Banion would come, and
Billy and Terry Smith,
different,
were they around?
yes, and some of the different fiddlers would come out, and
Jimmy Campbell.
Jimmy Campbell came out a lot. He even helped plow a garden at the end towards Bill's into Bill's life with Mike Compton. Compton would come out later, and so we started having jam sessions at the house once in a while, and even threw a big birthday party for him, and that's when we invited 250, and Bill signed the invitations himself. And it was the first time, Earl Scruggs, he told me, "Do you know this is the first time Bill's ever invited me to his home?"
Wow.
I said, "Well, Earl, we're just glad you're here."
That's
And
beautiful.
John Hartford used to come out a lot. Yeah, John Hartford. Don't want to forget John. I worked for him after Bill died.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm glad that, and you know what, Bill enjoyed that so much because they would feed off of each other, and it kept him young.
Yeah.
And it kept him on his toes, and he got kept his drive going. You know,
Yeah. His chops up and all that, for
he
sure.
kept his chops up, and they learned from him, and he listened to what they were doing, and they'd all make a pass at it all around the room. It was just wonderful, wonderful, happy memories.
I appreciate you sharing all this with us. If we're going to wrap it all up with a nice little Christmas bow here, if you think,
Okay.
Bill was obviously, a richly, complex and a bit complicated genius. If we were gonna like glean some lessons from him, just overall inspirationally from him, what do you think that he would really want us to take with us in our hearts that we could learn from his challenges?
Probably one of the first things he would say that he used to always say, I remember a phrase he would say, learn learn to allow for each other. You've got to learn to allow for one another,
Beautiful.
you know, and and always be a friend.
Always be a friend.
Always be a friend and friendship. He thought the world of friendship, and he kept that with him all down through his life. That friendship meant a lot to him, whether it was just regular friendship or musical friendships or friendships he made with his fans.
Yeah.
Um, he loved to go back to the farm to get recharged from the land
Yeah.
and to be quiet and to be out there and do work and be away, because later in life, the fans, it just got to be thousands and thousands of them. There was hard times he had there too, of course, in the 50s, but always to remain a friend and help always help one another. When a friend, even if they're not your friend, recognize if there's someone in need and help them. And
That is the gospel.
as far as the music is concerned, he would say, learn from your foundation, but and especially with your sing it like you. Sing it like it's you. I know he told Peter Rowan that one time
Yeah.
on a stage.
Singing
Just
like
about
Pete Bones.
sing it like Pete Rowan's. He was up at that microphone. In other words, so, uh, but Revere, if it is bluegrass, of course, we're talking about, of course, since it's Bill. learn the basics of it, learn your foundation,
Hmm.
and then take it from there. And if it strays away into something else, and don't call it bluegrass. It is what it is. It's something else.
Yeah.
But the main thing is, and to forgive, learn to mend. As you get older, he would mended fences with those that I won't call them enemies. I would just call it the folks that he had had a falling out with, or they had a falling out with him, or vice versa. And he wanted to reach out, and I always thought it was so important to mend fences before he left this world. And I'm so glad that he did and made peace.
Yeah.
And he would want. I think if he's listening right now, he would agree with that. That we've got to learn to love one another. And I think he learned through his times of when he stayed 28 years or whatever it was and didn't talk to Lester.
Hmm.
Felt slighted. That comes from the personality side of him, from being ridiculed for being cross-eyed, or being that way, or made fun of.
Yeah.
That was not his true essence, and that's like all of us, right?
Yeah.
So these personality traits we get later on in life come from little episodes in life that we go through, and it gets in the way of what we really are in here, which is love.
That's right.
So I would think that he would want me to say that right now, and I hope that's what he'd want me to say, and to stick at it and stick at your music, and don't give up, and stay true to what you hear in your head, and do the do all you can do with it. Don't give up.
That's it, Julia. Thank you so much for everything you have done for the world, for bluegrass music, for Bill, for your family.
Really.
Your heart is so big, and I think it's just beautiful that we've been able to do this interview to shed some light on your invaluable contributions to the culture and to love and to friendships. One of my favorite things about Bill, that we said no music has made more friends than bluegrass music. I believe that to the
That's
fullest.
right.
My folks met at a bluegrass festival. It wasn't for bluegrass music and Bill Monroe, then I probably wouldn't exist. And so just thank you for loving Bill and for loving the music and helping him stay strong and connecting so many people together and then sharing all this with us today. It is a beautiful Christmas gift. Thank you very much.
Yes, love's very important. One time there was a woman way out west when we played at Pacific Northwest, and the bus pulled up is in Portland or Seattle. I can't remember now. Maybe Portland, a big place. And it was sprinkling rain, and she was in a wheelchair and was waiting for him. And I'll never forget it. And he opened that door and went out there and spoke with her and told her that she could come in for free. With that, she had someone that was help pushing her. And there might be a bluegrass boy left alive that remembers this. Uh, but when he did that show, he did a tune for her. He wrote a tune, and I can't remember what it was. But that's the kind of man he was,
That's beautiful.
because he felt like when he was a little boy, he was afflicted, and he never forgot. He never forgot people that were down on their
Hmm.
luck.
Hmm.
And I hope anyone that's listening to this will know that there was a side of Bill Monroe that was the most wonderful spirit that you could ever know.
Hmm.
He was a man just like anyone else. He had his weaknesses like we all do, and he learned from them. But if we'll center on the love and
That's the one.
forgiveness,
That's the one.
you'll be just fine. And if you love your music, you keep playing it and don't you give up on it. And that's all I've got to say.
That's beautiful,
And
Julia.
God
Thank you
bless
so
you all.
much. Lots of love, and we hope to connect again sometime soon. Thank you so much.
And thank you. I hope I didn't talk too long, but I
Not a
really
bit.
love him, and he's still around here. He's still with us. So thank
Absolutely.
you, Christopher,
Always.
and
You're
thank
very
you
welcome.
for all you do too.
It is a pleasure to serve and
God bless
connect.
you.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. God bless you.
You too. Bye bye.